This has huge implications on the Houston Texans and how their season is going to go. I have had enough with the comments on the Texans' offensive line struggles. Oh, the Texans they didn't address the offensive line. They traded away their star players. It doesn't matter. You do not need a top 5, a top 10 offensive line in the league to be a great team. Joe Burrow disproved that when he went to the Super Bowl with nothing and they drafted Jamar Chase. There was all the rumors in the offseason. Oh, are they gonna be any good? And then they went on a run to the Super Bowl. Stop saying that this offensive line, just because there may not look like enough there, trust me, there's a lot to break down. So if you guys would hit that sub button, 83% of you are not subscribed to the channel. Appreciate everyone listening. Thanks for all the support. And again, drop your comments down below. These offensive line's remarks are just ridiculous. The Texans lost Laramie Tunsil. They traded Kenyon Green, who was awful, might I add, in the 2 seasons he was with the Texans. The first-round pick was absolute horse. He was terrible. It was really bad, and I don't mean to say it like that, but man, 5 sacks. He got injured early in the season. He got injured his first year. He played 14 games. He let up a lot of sacks, and the interior in general last season was bad. CJ Stroud, snap, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. He's got pressure in his face because Kenyon Green or Shaq Mason is letting somebody walk right around him. So enough with the negative remarks on the team last season, but it may sound like that for a little while, especially when you look at the offensive line this year. There's enough. And not to mention, they did address the offensive line position. Just because they didn't draft 500 offensive linemen doesn't mean they don't have anything. They have something. They drafted Ariante Ursary. They even traded up for him in the second round. Just because the Texans' first pick was not an offensive tackle. And yes, they might have had a better opportunity with Josh Simmons. But I like the fact that Nick Caserio went out and said, hey, let's go get some offensive weapons for our CJ Stroud and our quarterback, because he didn't have any last year. John Mechie was the number 2 after Tank Dell got hurt. So it's a little bit frustrating to see why everyone's all of a sudden just saying, the Texans they don't have a good offensive line. That's why they're going to be middle of the pack this season. They're going to do just like what they did last year. Let me actually mention the fact that besides the fact that Shaq Mason was not good last year, the Texans were bottom 10 in offensive line ranking according to Pro Football Focus. Not to mention, you also can look at the fact that this team in general was a big factor. Shaq Mason probably was playing injured. 10.5 sacks throughout the whole season. The divisional round led up 2.5 sacks. It was a big factor to that 8-sack game against the Chiefs. But the biggest problem with the Texans offense was not only the play calling, which took, 5-6 seconds for plays to develop, and the offensive line couldn't hold up in the time that CJ Stroud could get the ball out of his hands. That was a factor as well. So you now have a new offense. You now have a newly improved offensive line. And the fact of the matter is you have veterans at every position. Cam Robinson, and then a rookie to back him up, Ariante Ursary. Titus Howard, who's only allowed 4 sacks last season, had to alternate between tackle and guard. Now he's set at his guard position, which honestly he's probably looked better at. Jarrett Patterson did solid as well last year, only 3 sacks allowed. Juice Scruggs at right guard, it's probably going to be Laken Tomlinson, the 33-year-old veteran. I know it doesn't sound like, they're putting some bum out there. No, Tomlinson is going to be what Shaq Mason wasn't. Shaq Mason let up double-digit sacks. Tomlinson, he may have had 7-8 sacks allowed with the Seahawks last year, but he's a veteran. He's in there, and he can coach up Juice Scruggs. They traded for Ed Ingram for a depth piece, and the only thing that I really thought the Texans could have drafted was interior offensive line, and that was for the future. So next year you can go out and draft a guard, keep Tomlinson, or go out and get another veteran, and that's that. But the right tackle spot, you have enough. Blake Fisher, I don't know if he could start on his own, but you also have Trent Brown, who's another veteran who can start. So maybe you put Ursary at left tackle and you put Cam Robinson at right tackle. I'm not the biggest fan of Robinson. Yes, he's definitely a down play considering what Laramie Tunsil was. Tunsil was great. Tunsil also had a lot of penalties and a lot of baggage that happened last season, and just all the false start penalties, a couple holding penalties. But overall, yes, he's better than Cam Robinson, and I would rather Tunsil, but I feel like Tunsil kind of just threw off the vibe of the offensive line. So you have now an opportunity here to just kind of re-situate yourselves with pretty much a new and improved offensive line. The only 2, 3, 4 names that stayed was Howard, Patterson, Scruggs, and Fisher. Everyone else is, yeah, you drafted Ursa, you signed Tomlinson, you signed Robinson, you traded for Ingram, you traded for Trent Brown. But the fact that this article is just going to say they got rid of Kenyon Green, they got rid of Tunsil, those players needed to go. Tunsil was only getting older. His contract was huge. He wanted another big deal incoming. This is one of the last years of his deal. You would have to pay him again next year. So Caserio is planning for the future. And this is very smart because you look at the offensive line, and I'm done with the fact that the Texans fell short at offensive line. They addressed what they needed to. They have veterans at every position. Yes, it's not the best offensive line, but who said you need a top 10 offensive line to go to the Super Bowl? Seriously, all the Texans offensive line needs to be is middle of the pack, 14th. I don't care if it's top 10. I don't care if it's top 5. It's definitely not going to be, but I'm not expecting it to be. All you need is enough time for CJ Stroud to throw to his new and improved weapons in Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins, and you even got a lot more depth pieces. Justin Watson, Braxton Berrios, and a new system, might I add. The fact that you have a new system, I didn't even mention that they were the second most sacked team in football last year, but the fact that you have a new system where you can bring some motion in, you have Kirk who's a slot guy, you have Berrios who's a slot guy, you have Noel who can fill in as the slot guy, plus Higgins, they're both teammates, so they can line up opposite of each other. They were a nasty duo at Iowa State, but the biggest thing here is when you look at this team, it's going to look different. Not only the offensive line, not only the weapons, but the way the play calls are going to shape together. And another very smart thing that Caserio did is that with everyone on this team, guess what they can all do? I'll give you a wild guess. They can all run block very well. There was a reason they went out and got Laken Tomlinson instead of going out and getting former Jags guard Brandon Sheriff. Sheriff is a great pass blocker, but the run game is what the Texans are really going to want to establish with Nick Caley. Not that Bobby Slowick did a bad job of that. He just wasn't consistent in switching up the run plays with the pass plays. And you have to be smart enough to know as an offensive coordinator that you can run it and then pass it. You don't have to run it 25 times in a row for 49 yards and know, that's probably not going to work. So you have to play it by an actual idea system. And what I mean by that is you can't just blindly play call, all right, run, pass, punt. Situational football, man. That's why Bobby Slowick was fired. He couldn't have situational football. Nick Caley's, hopefully, I don't know much about him considering he was a passing game coordinator, but do something different. Bring some motion over. That's what I was expecting from the Niners system with Bobby Slowick. I was expecting motion. I was expecting a lot more. And yes, to be fair, the receiving core was not the greatest. Yes, the offensive line wasn't the greatest, but the play calling wasn't good either. So if you can run it consistently, maybe run a few bootlegs, I'm expecting something similar to that Rams offense where you have Puka Nacua, your alpha 1A in Nico Collins, and your 1B in either Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins. It's definitely going to be a little bit different of an offense because I don't think Cooper Kupp is an actual representation of anyone on this team because he's more of a slot receiver. The Texans have a better number 2 than they do a slot guy. So I'm just trying to figure out what the offense is going to look like. It's probably going to look like a lot of run, power right, wham right up the middle, HB dive. I don't know, but I would expect a lot of bootlegs. I would expect a lot of RPOs, run pass options with Nico Collins. CJ Stroud and Nico Collins are going to be in a rhythm. And when you double Collins, you can't double Higgins. And that's what I'm looking forward to most. This offense is going to remind me, and this is going to sound really stupid, but it's going to remind me of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Yes, T. Higgins, Jaden Higgins. I think T. Higgins and Jaden Higgins are actually going to be very similar. And now, obviously, Nico Collins is not Jamar Chase by any means, but he's definitely a borderline top 10 wide receiver, if not already. So, overall, do not sleep on this offensive line. I know I've had it up there for a while, but it's up there for a reason. This is a solid offensive line. You don't need 5, 6, 7 elite. Ideally, you would love to have that, but the Texans could not afford to go there. They could have drafted a couple guards in the later rounds for depth, But Caserio said we're gonna go double receiver. So I didn't question his plan because you have veterans, and that was the point of getting veterans at every spot. If you couldn't draft the receiver, you go offensive line. If you couldn't draft offensive line, you go receiver. And they weren't set on Josh Simmons, so they traded back. And I don't have any problem with that. The media is thinking, oh, the Texans have to be ready to go right now. Their offensive line sucks. Stop. Stop it. Stop. That's not gonna be the case. I'm serious. Every year, people try and find, not just the Texans, but any team, people will find the smallest thing. Whether it's the Vikings last year, Sam Darnold, he's not too good. He fits the system. He fit it. I didn't expect it, but he blew the doors off everybody. He threw for as many yards as he did. And that was it. You saw Sam Darnold, you saw something special in him. He got a big contract. But there's always going to be something that you downplay a team for, and I don't know what it is. With the Bengals, it might be the defense. With the Jets, it might be the fact that they haven't been good for the past decade. That might be a little bit of a shot at Jet fans, sorry. But I'm trying to explain this in terms of an outside of the Texans aspect, in terms of this is not just being said about the Texans. It's something the media loves to do and criticize the fact that, oh, the Texans don't have an offensive line. They're not going far in the playoffs. They might win the division, but they're not going to, they're just going to say that. And last year, it was the fact that there's the big three in Houston: CJ Stroud, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon. Mixon was great. But then, he had that ankle injury. Diggs tore his ACL, and Stroud didn't look the greatest because of the play calling, and the offensive line didn't help. 52 sacks last season. I mean, the biggest problem last year was Shaq Mason. And if you're going to say that Shaq Mason was a big need, they cut Shaq Mason. Good. That guy should be cut. He was not doing well. Ligon Tomlinson should be what he wasn't. And you're looking at this team now. Again, it's not perfect, but it's new. And it's improved. Not just the offensive line, but the receivers behind it. You have a lot of depth at receiver, something you didn't have last year. Tight end as well. You're probably going to see multiple tight end spots. But the highlight of this team is the defense. And if the offensive line can even be subpar, better than it was last year, you're that much better as a football team. So, looking forward to the season. All you have to be is a subpar, average offensive line, better than last year. And I think you can do a lot better than 10.5 sacks from one player in one season. That is bad. Very bad. So as long as that doesn't happen, I think the Texans will be in good shape. But other than that, I'm sick and tired of everyone saying that this offensive line is going to be garbage just because they didn't make a big move, a splashy move. They didn't go get a big name. Whoop-de-doo. Who cares? There's talks of them going after Jedrick Wills. I doubt it. It's all the media saying that because they need an offensive line. They got Ursary. They can train him up. If they need a guard next year, they can go out and draft a guard. If a couple players get injured, you could sign a guard. But I've had enough. The biggest thing now is establishing chemistry in minicamp with your new rookie wide receivers, your new veteran wide receiver in Christian Kirk, and a lot of that, because the only real receiver that Stroud is throwing to last year that he had this year is Nico Collins and maybe Dalton Schultz. Kirk is new, Higgins is new, Noel is new. So that's the biggest thing for me. Watson and Braxton Barris as well. But enough rambling for me. I've had my fun today. It's this offensive line stuff is making me go delirious. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the offensive line. Am I losing my mind thinking that this is not a big deal? Let me know. I feel like some people have their different opinions. Some people think it could be better. And obviously the offensive line could be better. But at the same time, it's not terrible. It's not what it was last year. And I think last year they addressed the problems that was on the team last year that no longer are on the team this year. And that has been the good part. So thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, 83% of you not subscribed to the channel. Appreciate all the support on the videos. If you want to stay up to date with Texans news, hit that sub button. But until next time, it's Mike Zanetti, Texans Digest. Leave your comments, and we'll see you in the next video.